Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Matthew Straeb. Looking forward to our conversation today, Matthew.
Yes, please. Yeah, great.
Yeah, cool. So Matthew is the president of Heart Galleries of America and the co-founder, I think. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's correct.
co-founder. And he Heart Galleries helps kids in foster care find homes or people that want to adopt kids out of foster care find the kids. And Matthew's done some great work in that area. So if you haven't heard of Heart Galleries, check them out. As always, listeners, links in the show notes. So Matthew, what does thriving mean to you?
What is thriving?
Yeah,
Um, Growing, enthusiastic, forward thinking, um, wanting to get something done.
getting something done. And what about thriving adoptees? When you think of thriving adoptees, when the name of the podcast, right? What comes to mind when you think about that?
That you're, that we're trying to get more kids adopted. I mean, and we're trying to energize the system, that we're trying to introduce new ideas or concepts that can be different or change the way things have been done all along, and that we're open to new ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. So is it about curiosity then? Is that one of the
Yeah,
key things?
that too. I mean, open to new ideas means you have to be curious, you have to be aware, you have to be willing to engage new concepts, new ideas. I think that's one of the challenges we have in a lot of systems, not just this foster care adoption system.
Yeah. So I guess it sometimes we have challenges as individuals, right? Our openness. So I don't know if you have them in the States. We have these things in the UK called grumpy old men, right? Yeah, those things, right? So
Sure.
we're like the idea is that, or my hope is that I don't become one of them. But
Right,
grumpy old men,
right.
maybe it's a global phenomenon. I'm not sure, but we are grumpy old men we are. I'm lumping myself in with them, all right, but they're very set. They're very set in their ways. They're not open to change, in terms of thoughts, in terms of beliefs, in
Right.
terms of habits. Everything's kind of locked down and shut up. The curiosity has gone, but we don't want that in our kids, right?
Of course not. No, we want them to be to feel like they have beliefs, but they can change their belief system, which, belief system is what we're sort of, we can be born with a belief system to some extent, but also we are raised with a belief system. But maybe that belief system doesn't serve us, and that's how we can become grumpy.
Yeah, yeah.
We have to be willing to change our belief system.
Willing to
Otherwise,
change, yeah.
nothing else.
So there's
Thinking
a
all
big there's a big how question
sure.
coming to me about how we do that, as soon as that how question comes it comes to mind, and I think of it, I think that's a bit trite. That's a bit it's perhaps too simplistic. It's more about like how change happens. What's your take on how we change beliefs or how beliefs are changed?
Well, I don't think we do it easily. So we have to experience some kind of crisis, pain, failure to change. Because otherwise, why would we change? Because it's working fine. If we think it's working fine, or we get comfortable, we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's how change happens. And if you're not comfortable with change, things are changing all the time, then that's how you become grumpy.
Yeah. Saying no ways.
Because at the end of the day, as you get older and older, and you get frustrated, and you haven't achieved or thrived throughout your whole life, you're going to be very frustrated and angry at the end of your life, and that's how you become grumpy.
Yeah. So how can we uh, imbue that in our kids? What's that about? To what extent is it about modeling? Is it's about leadership? What you've got two kids, I guess.
Yeah,
How old are your kids now in there?
25 and 27.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was guessing 20, so not 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does imbuing that in your kids mean to you?
Well, the first thing I have to do is let go of my kids so that they can have their own ideas, their own belief systems. They can have their own failures. I think a lot of parents save their kids too much. They wait, they don't let their kids fail. And, my approach has always been, I want my kids to fail because that means they're trying new things. And then there's two things going on. One is how do you respond to failure? Okay. And number two, I want them to fail while they're around me, meaning before 18. So I don't want to save them. I want them to fail so then I can actually have some input because once they leave home, I have less and less influence on them to demonstrate to them how you deal with change, how you respond to change, and that change can be good. Number one, change is a constant. It's constant. Things are constantly changing. So, and I wish a lot of our systems that we deal with today were willing to change. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's one of those challenges about bureaucracies.
Yeah.
They're built not to change. They're built
Well,
robust.
they're too comfortable. They're too comfortable and they're self-protecting also, which is very challenging.
Yeah,
Self-protecting industry or bureaucracy is one of the most challenging things to break. Yeah.
yeah. If we go take it back to the kids, one of the ideas that you mentioned was the notion that we're born with beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
My personal opinion is we're all born with the fundamental idea of a God or some kind of a higher being, a creative intelligence. Whether or not we want to listen to that fundamental idea or whether or not we act on that fundamental idea is the choice that we all make. Not one way is not better than the other way. I'm just for me that the fact that I've been able to tap into that inner resource has made my life a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give us some examples about that?
Well, I mean, you have, basic idea, you can't experience faith unless you engage it. So you have to, um, if you've got a challenge or something ahead of you, the courage comes after the action, not before. I think too many times I've gotten stuck only because I was worried about what was going to happen on the other side. So I would kind of try to muster courage up. But actually, what happens is I do the action with the idea, the faith that it's going to be okay, because it doesn't really matter what the outcome is because I'm taking the action. The action is the key. And then afterwards comes the courage. Well, I look back and say, oh, you know what? That wasn't so bad. And how did I get from here to there? And then I can look and see how other outside sources played a role in that because at the end of the day, I don't really control a lot of outcomes. So
No.
does that make
So
sense? I'm not
yeah,
sure.
it does. The metaphor that popped into my head was I thought of a movie metaphor. So when
Okay.
I met Matthew a month or so ago, he was explaining that his background is as a colorist in Hollywood, coloring movies. So getting the balance right. So the movie metaphor that came to mind was the Indiana Jones and the
Yeah.
Temple of Doom, where they've got this massive chasm to
Right.
overcome. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's shocking that you're going to bring that up because that's exactly the example that I use in many cases. And I've heard that only one time before in the open forum. I know when he steps out into the gorge and then
Yes.
it all comes open to him that he can see the log that takes him across the other side.
Yeah. So
That's
there's
crazy.
stepping stones.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, there's
That's
stepping stones across this massive gorge
exactly.
or chasm, and if he misses, he's going like a thousand, a million feet down, and that's going to be the end of the of Harrison Ford. But of
Oh,
course, it
yeah,
being a movie, it doesn't happen like that. But
right.
he takes one step at a time, and the stepping stone, the stepping stone appears, as
Right.
he's taking the step, I think, if I remember this rightly.
He has to take the step before it appears.
Yeah. And that's faith. That's what faith means, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's so funny because you're the second person that because I've used that example since that movie came out and it stuck with me, and you're the second person that actually has brought that up and recognized it. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Very good.
I don't know where that comes from.
I'm
Um,
impressed.
so how do we, how do we do this for our kids? You know, like if I'm an adoptive parent listening, right? It's the same whether you're an adoptive parent or a biological parent, to use a jargony kind of a word. How do we? You talked about being born with belief. How do we turn up their faith dial?
Well,
What's this about?
we're talking about foster kids.
We're talking about foster kids. We're talking about kids.
Well,
Talk to me. I'm interested in the wealth of your wisdom and your learnings. So whatever feels right for you from what you've experienced.
yeah, I think at the end of the day, we all experience trauma, and I think that trauma comes on in an early age. It doesn't matter whether you're whether you in a healthy environment or not healthy environment. We all experience trauma. And I think that trauma introduces an opportunity. If we experience trauma, and the first thing we have a bunch of fear that goes with that, that fear can manifest itself in a lot of negative ways. We're looking for other things, we want to control things, for example. We become very controlling. We become very angry. We turn to substances. We turn to other things to try to minimize that fear. Um, at the end of the day, we need to teach each other how to help each other, and the fear and that a lot of that trauma that's generating fear really has to do with us being able to trust other people so that we can express our fears. And then once we talk about our fears, because fears are all made up in our head, there is no real fear except height and there's only a couple of real fears in the world. So we create all these fears. So if we expose those fears, I found that, and we allow inside of a trusting relationship, whether it's with adults or kids, it doesn't really matter. That fear seems will dissipate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads to faith and hope, because what we can do is look back, we see what happened, we have to reflect, and then we can see that, oh, okay, next time I go in that situation, I'm going to have a lot more faith and hope, and I'll be able to deal with it differently.
Yeah. So or to what extent is fear the opposite or the absence of faith?
Um, well, fear isn't really the absence. Fear is the only antidote to fear is faith at the end of the day.
Okay.
Um, Absence of fear never really happens, I don't think. It's tough
No.
to, yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that.
We all try to avoid fear. We're all because fear generates some emotions. We try to get rid of fear. Okay, through all different means and mechanisms, which creates a lot of different types of characteristics that are not really favorable, and that can be lying, cheating, whatever, all kinds of different things to try to get just to get rid of the fear. But the reality is, you're never going to really get rid of fear because it's a con because our minds are creating this stuff.
Yeah.
Only way to really get rid of it is through faith. You have to
Yeah.
have faith. Yeah.
One of the metaphors that's popping into my head for fear, and as you're expressing it, is the well, I'll share a little bit of a story. So I
Yeah.
was water skiing. I was watching my friend water ski, and this is like 30 years ago, and suddenly the boat did 180 degrees.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah, 180 degree spin. And I was kneeling in watching, I was going backwards, right? So I wasn't like the driver's facing forward. I was facing backwards watching my mate. And
You're the
I was kneeling. Yeah, I was kneeling in the back seat.
right.
So when it did 180 degrees, very quickly. I nearly went over the side
Sure.
because I was kneeling up and kind of bruised my ribs and stuff like that. And I was like, what the hell? Because I hadn't realized what had happened. And what had happened, uh, speedboats are steered by a wire, by a steel wire from the steering wheel, and it twists the engine, right?
Sure.
And the but the but the propeller has a natural bias. It's
Right.
it's not set it's not set straight. It's got a natural bias, and that when that steering cable snapped, the natural bias kicked it to one side,
Right.
right? That's why it did 180 degrees.
Oh, so you had a
So
failure
yeah,
wire. Okay.
failure. It's a failure of the wire. So
Gotcha.
um, I think that our brains can kind of programmed with that natural
Right.
negativity bias. It's about people talk about it being, is it the reptilian brain or something about us keeping us alive?
Yeah, I think people are biased towards negativity, actually. It's a protection mechanism for ourselves. We look at the worst case and then we decide, can we deal with that or not?
Yeah,
Then looking at, what could be a positive outcome. I think
yeah.
we our bias is negativity,
I,
actually.
as humans, and I guess in adopted kids or and especially foster adopted kids who are in foster care, that that innate human negativity
Right.
bias
Yeah,
has been amped up somehow
I see it all the
be-
time.
because of their life experience, because of the multiplicity of uh,
Well,
homes that they've been in, the placements. I talked to somebody the other day, and the kid had been placed in 23 different homes
yeah.
before it landed. Yeah. So, given that this, uh,
That,
given that
but
this,
there is there's an opportunity there because I've seen it in many kids that that's drawn, in those that's drawn them and connected them with their God, a God, because that's the only constant they have in their life. Or in a lot of cases, a mentor or a guardian ad litem. There's two or three opportunities for a constant to appear in those transitions. And if that can be fostered, then they have a chance, of actually not gaining so much negative bias, I think. Yeah.
yeah. So the constancy is the antidote.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And the constancy is actually there's not many opportunities for constants to appear in a foster kid's life as they move from house to house. It can either be the case manager, a guardian ad litem, some kind of mentor, or a faith.
yeah. So, what does this mean for adoptive parents raising kids ex foster out of foster care or who have been adopted in terms of fear and faith? What are the implications of that?
Well, I think there has to be a level of acceptance by the parents that you're dealing with a kid that's been traumatized, that's going to be angry, and you have to really focus on gaining and building the trust. And you do that by doing trusting things, you treat them the same as the other. If you have other kids in the home, you basically discipline them like you would your own kids. You don't favor them in one way or the other, but at the same time you've got to gain that trust with them, otherwise they're not going to open up and you're not going to have an opportunity to minimize or alleviate that fear and anger. Yeah.
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 The word fear comes up again. I had this strange question popped into my head, Matthew, as they sometimes do. One happened to me this morning is, and you're the first person that I've got to ask about it. Ask for their opinion. So, what do you think trauma's made of?
Um, well, there's lots of different types of trauma, right? There's imagined trauma, there's real trauma, there's physical trauma, mental anguish or trauma. So I think it's all of those things, and then we kind of lump it all into one big bucket. But it's not, that's why it's so complicated. But I think, yeah, I think trauma um, is when you've been, in some sense abused or mistreated, and you don't have any way of fixing it or expressing it. Yeah,
Yeah,
becomes,
yeah,
and trauma turns into anger. Yeah,
yeah.
because you're
I,
pissed off. You're pissed off. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
rightfully so.
yeah,
Rightfully so.
yeah.
It's not
We're back to grumpy old
their fault.
men.
It's not their fault.
It's not their
It's not.
fault.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't get to an answer for my own question this morning when I thought of
Oh,
what is
oh,
trauma made of.
all
But
right.
I was thinking about the answer as I was listening to you, and I agree. It seems very complex, but the idea that popped into my head is one of the main ingredients of trauma is fear.
Right.
You could simplify it, right? So you said anger as well. Um,
Well, the thing is, a
but
lot of these parents, a lot of foster or adopted parents, they have, first of all, you have to recognize that these kids have been traumatized, that they have fear, and that they're angry. If you don't do that and you think that it doesn't, you just ignore it, you're not going to have a good outcome. You're not going to have a good outcome.
no. So it's sort of like to me like trauma's made of anger, trauma's made of fear, maybe trauma's made of shame, sometimes shame.
Yeah.
I was talking to a kid who was a kid, a 23-year-old guy who was abused as a kid.
Yeah, that's
And
a ball of
yeah,
wax. Yeah.
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 Um, I came up with this metaphor a couple of years ago now, and the metaphor goes like this: that it's on this theme, right? So that's why it popped into my head. That trauma is a toxic cocktail of fear, and we could go further than fear, probably go to terror, right?
Yeah.
Fear, terror, anger, fury, amped up anger, and and shame. But but we are the glass, not the contents of it.
Correct. I mean, because somebody can go through a traumatic event and they can see it two or three different ways on the other side. Some people it affects one way, then a different other way. It's not the same outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that totally. It's about the different perspectives that we each have a different perspective on it. What I was kind of getting at was a separation from the trauma that we feel.
Yeah.
Like trauma is largely a felt thing. It may have all those different origins as you're describing, but as it manifests, it usually manifests or mostly manifests as a feeling thing.
That's right.
It doesn't manifest as it manifests more as a feeling thing than it does manifest as a thought thing, right?
Right.
And and it's not who we are.
Well, I mean, trauma, if you're not physically affected by it, then there's an emotional, psychological point. But that's up to us, right? How much we want to let that rule us or
Yeah,
affect.
yeah.
We decide how much psychological or emotional damage we want to incur, right? Based on the
It,
tool to avoid it. Or
if we have that choice, I guess. I was talking to this
you always have a choice. Yeah,
choice, yeah, but we've got a choice as adults. To what extent do our kids have the choice to? I don't know.
not really. They don't have the tools. Yeah, that's that's called abuse. Yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
what tools do we give them? How do we empower them in this regard?
honestly, the only one that I know that is kind of foolproof and works is the faith one. So we can, because you have to have some kind of level of knowledge, intellect to deal with some of this stuff. I think as a young child, you don't really have that. You shouldn't have that, especially if it's, physical or sexual abuse. I mean, that's just, you're really doing harming the kid, obviously, abusing. So with faith will be the only thing, and I don't know how much faith a young child or even a teenager can have. So I think that's yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're hitting on the challenges. Yeah.
One of the things that's been coming up for me recently is an idea based on something that a American business guru, leadership guru, came up with a while ago. So this is the guy, is Jim something, Jim Collins. He wrote a book
Oh yeah.
called Good to Great. Yeah. And one of the things that he says is strategy eats, no, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that with regard to what I've learned from doing the podcast, interviewing the people that I've done,
Yeah.
and and to draw those things together and put them in the words that you're talking about.
Right.
I would say that faith eats psychology for breakfast.
Faith eats psychology.
For breakfast, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense. Yes.
yeah. So the idea that I'm trying to get at is the potency in terms of what helps us thrive, what helps us heal from trauma. Faith is far more potent and powerful a source. It kind of it trumps, to use a word that people might not like me using. Um, it trumps psychology.
Right.
Yeah. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
do,
Exactly.
yeah. Why do you think that is? It's a tough question to ask somebody that I've just foisted it onto, but can you talk around that, your
Oh,
perspective on it?
uh, yeah, it's most of the I don't know. I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I didn't think
Okay.
about it, to be
Yeah,
honest.
sure. Uh, so as I'm thinking about it while you were thinking about
Well,
it, right?
the answer I think would be that faith takes us out of ourselves, and basically all we're really looking for is a shift in perspective. So if we can shift our perspective, we've shifted the psychological direction, if we're going towards a negative. The other thing I would say is that anytime that some negative thought comes in my mind, for me personally, I immediately dismiss it. I don't let it grow. I don't give power to it because one negative thought will build on a negative thought will build on another negative outcome, and then before I know it, I'm looking at 100 different, you know, impossible
Yeah,
things that happen. A good friend of mine told me one time, he said, I've suffered 100 tragedies and only two of them actually happened.
yeah,
That's to
yeah.
sums it up.
I
Yeah.
I heard an idea recently that fits with that, and it's the idea is the second thought, right?
Mm,
So we have no kind of power
right.
over the or say or anything or control in terms of the first thought,
Yeah,
but we can choose the second thought.
sure.
And that second thought is the degree to which we take the first thought on board.
Right.
Yeah. So it's the same. It's saying, it sounds like a similar thing to what you're saying. You're just
Yeah.
like dismissing it. Yeah.
Yeah. If we're all were judged or acted on our first thought, we'd probably all be in jail. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah. Um, so I think for me the power of the faith the power of faith or the power of faith over psychology, it's you talked about it being bigger than ourselves and well, how should I put it? We're not our psychology, right? Like psychology and trauma to me seem like blankets that uh, that
Yeah.
obscure us, right? The fundamental thing is if we're in the middle of I had I, I told you because Matthew's in you're West Coast, aren't you? No,
Yeah.
Florida.
Florida,
West
yes.
West, yeah. I was in Florida a couple of weeks ago, and I had this idea popped into my head that well, the question popped into my head: where are my car keys? Right. So I was in the hotel room in Florida, and I went to my jacket, and it was the jacket that I'd put up in the overhead
Mhm.
parcel thing in the plane. And I went into the pockets and I thought, there's no keys there. And I thought, I'm sure I put the key in my jacket pocket and maybe it's fallen out, right? In the compartment, the luggage compartment. So next I went to this little bag that I take
Right.
when I go traveling. And I was it's got a gazillion pockets and I couldn't find the keys anywhere. And I was into a full on
Oh,
meltdown,
right, right.
full on meltdown, like a almost like a panic attack. I'm thinking, well, when I fly back from Florida to Manchester, my wife's going to have to come pick me up,
Right.
or she's going to have to bring the spare car keys
Right.
over. She's going to have to meet me. Is the battery in the remote control, you know, the blipper for the alarm in in that key fob, is that is that flat or is that so I was completely lost in this panic, right? And it that's what trauma feels like. We are lost in our trauma. We're lost in the whole
Right.
experience of it. We're hidden, we're buried, we're lost. We're concealed, right?
Right.
In the middle of that thing going on,
Right.
and in that space, we have no choice
Right.
about yeah. Our psychology's run away with us. It's kidnapped us, right? Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
so the biggest for me, the biggest thing that we can see is a separation between how we feel
Yeah.
and our trauma and who we are. So when I say trauma is a toxic cocktail of fear, shame, and anger, fear, shame, and terror, but we're the glass, not the
That's right.
cocktail.
Right.
I'm separating who we are from the trauma that we feel.
Well, simple way of putting it is feelings aren't facts, right? So, just because I feel something doesn't mean it's really what's happening, not reality. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why we need other people to talk to about it, to check it and say, hey, am I thinking straight here or not? And that's where the trust, that's the one unfortunate things about a foster kid or even an adoptive kid is that they don't really have those trusting relationships. So they're creating their own reality, and that can be a real dangerous place to be. Yeah.
yeah. So trust and faith would be the fundamental building blocks
That's right.
that we're putting or the scaffolding, the fundamental building blocks, the scaffolding to help our kids thrive.
Feel like most foster kids and adoptive kids trust the system,
Well, yeah,
right? So
I guess it's we're looking at the trusting the family system, the broader welfare
the,
system.
the actions that are being taken, I mean, the actions that are being taken, is that fostering trust in the system?
Yeah,
Sure.
and
How they're being managed? Is that really achieving the goal?
yeah, and are we fostering trust? Are we as parents fostering trust amongst our kids with our
Oh,
kids? Yeah,
we have, right, exactly. The worst thing that can happen, I always I kind of jokingly talk to people and say our kids would be perfect if it wasn't for their parents.
yeah. So if faith and trust are fundamental building blocks
Yeah.
for thriving, what else do you see as the key? key things that we want to imbue, that we want to
You have to have
create for our kids.
you have to have opportunity. You have to create, there has to be opportunities. I think that's one of the things that really challenges foster kids and adoptive kids. They're put into like a system, and there's really not a lot of wiggle room for them to break out of that. They become part of the system, and then there's no opportunities really for them to really grow or have new thoughts or ideas, or how do you break out of that? I mean, as a parent of my own kids, I mean, I want to foster them to take chances, to take risks, to have opportunities. I mean, we spend a lot of time and money on giving my children opportunities.
Can
So
you give us some examples of that? What you mean?
whether it's in sports or it's in academia or in getting pushing them into something that they may not think they can do, and then they end up doing it, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So is that us having faith in them before they have faith in themselves?
of course, yeah, of course. I mean, and sometimes they fail, but that's part of the experience. Then you push too far. You know, that's part of being. It's called wisdom. That's called, like, knowing your children and their strengths and weaknesses. Not so.
Yeah, yeah. So we're coming up on time, Matthew. Is there anything else that
I
I've
really, I really appreciate the discussion. It's got me. It's very thought provoking. Thank you.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, for me too.
Yeah.
And that there's that big question for me about what trauma's made of, right? It seems really big.
Yeah.
And another one that I had that I've kind of resolved more elegantly, I think, is what are beliefs made of, right? What are beliefs made of?
Beliefs.
Um,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
yeah. What would you say to that? What would you say that beliefs are made of?
I think we basically those come from people that we trust, that we um um basic beliefs come from our upbringing, I believe. The actions our parents take, the actions that our friends or that we learn in school. As we get into our own, adulthood or whatever, those beliefs need to be challenged.
Yeah,
I think too many of us get lazy. We become lazy, and then we become hardened because our ego protects our beliefs. Because if our beliefs are wrong, that means then we somehow, maybe we challenge ourselves that we're wrong, or that for some reason we could be, not worth less, I guess,
yeah,
maybe is.
yeah.
We go
Wow.
to the length to protect those beliefs, and a lot. I mean, just turn on the news, you'll see it a night and day. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Thanks
All
a
right.
lot, Matthew. And
Simon, have a good day.
thanks a
Take
lot. Thanks,
care.
listeners. Bye bye.